Good, just hold on. Question number 2, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
Yes, and especially our action to rein in inflation and to reduce the cost of living as part of our plan to rebuild the economy. We had a plan to fight inflation and we started work on day one, stopping the wasteful spending, removing costs on businesses and returning the Reserve Bank to a single focus on inflation. Now we see inflation is tracking down to 3.3% and heading lower. And last week brought more good news for every Kiwi with a mortgage, with the first cut to the official cash rate in 4.5 years. We know life is tough out there, but there are encouraging early signs that our plan is working to get New Zealand back on track.
Supplementary question. What responsibility does he take for the fact that since he became Prime Minister, the monthly number of new building consents has dropped 26%, 6,000 jobs have gone from the building and construction sector, and 57% of construction businesses now report difficulties with government procurement and work consent conditions, up from 36% last year?
Well, that is a function of a bad economic mismanagement and vandalism from the previous administration that created something called inflation. And inflation works because then you have an 84% increase in spending, wasteful spending, much of it, and you increase debt from $5 to $100 billion, and you hire 18,000 more public servants, you get high levels of domestic inflation. That then leads to high levels of interest rates. When interest rates go up, that leads to recession, which is what we've been experiencing, thank you to the previous Labor government, and in turn that leads to rising unemployment. That's why this government's working incredibly hard on the root causes of the problem, which is actually getting inflation down so we get interest rates down, so we get the economy growing and we keep people in work.
That's your question. Well, is Civil Contractors Association...
Sorry, please don't talk while someone is asking a question.
Is Civil Contractors Association CEO Alan Pollard wrong when he said, quote, "We have this strange situation where there's a mountain of infrastructure work that the country needs and it's coming," but then goes on to say, "But since the election, everything has stopped effectively"?
What is happening is there's no doubt that is a sector experiencing the impacts of inflation, which is a gift from the previous administration. But importantly, this is a government that wants to get things built. And I really appreciate the members' interest in the area of infrastructure, and I'd ask them to come on board and support our fast-track legislation.
Question, Mr Speaker. Why does the latest Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors Global Monitor Survey report that New Zealand's construction sector is now the most depressed since that survey started and is the most depressed in the world, with more than half of respondents citing as a reason the change in government in October 2023, which resulted in cuts, delays and policy change?
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I just don't know where to start. What a gift. What I just say to that member is...
No, hold on. You can't ask a question from your leader and then just barrack like crazy so you don't get the answer. Please, perhaps we'll ask the question again and then we'll have the answer reasonably presented.
Very happy to, Mr Speaker. Why does the latest Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors Global Monitor Survey report that New Zealand's construction sector is now the most depressed since the survey started and is the most depressed in the world, with more than half of the respondents citing as the major reason the change in government in October 2023, which resulted in cuts, delays and policy change?
The reason that sector is feeling it pretty tough is because of something called inflation, high interest rates and recession, which was a gift from the previous administration. What we have a government here that wants to invest in infrastructure, make sure it's modern and reliable infrastructure that drives economic productivity in this country. We've taken the genius idea from David Parker about fast-track provisions. We're putting it in and expanding it further. I'd ask him to come on board and support the rule if he's serious about building infrastructure.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Can I just make the point that all the barracking and interjection doesn't make an answer turn into the answer that someone might be wanting to hear? By all means, carry on.
Supplementary question. What's the total value in dollar terms of the infrastructure projects that have been cancelled or delayed since his government took office, including school rebuilds and expansions, roading projects, rail upgrades, hospital rebuilds, state house upgrades and new builds, and public transport projects?
Well, I'm sure if the member gives a specific question, we can get him a specific answer. But what I would say is that there is $68 billion in this year's budget for infrastructure. I would also make a point to the member that actually having projects with names doesn't mean they're actually projects. So spending 6 years on Auckland Light Rail, spending $250 to $300 million doesn't make it happen. It's just a post-it note slogan bumper sticker. That's what that is. The same thing happened on Lake Onslow, just another bumper sticker. So there's a difference between real projects that improve productivity and phantom projects that just actually are post-it notes.
Supplementary question,
Just
Mr.
make the
Speaker.
point that while barracking against an answer that you don't like doesn't make it change, nor does barracking in favour of an answer you like make it any better. So just a bit of calm. The Honourable David Seymour.
When the Prime Minister eventually leaves office, does he anticipate spending his first year out combing the world for statistics to show how badly he buggered the economy?
Well, I just say to the member on this side of the government, as he well knows, he's part of actually a government that wants to get things done. And we think there are 5 things that we need to grow this country: a world-class education system. We didn't inherit that from this previous government. We've got to embrace science, technology, innovation. We need to get rid of the red tape, green tape and bureaucracy. We need to make sure we've got modern, reliable infrastructure and, importantly, international connections. That's what will drive economic growth.
It may surprise the member to know that the Prime Minister has no responsibility to this House for his future. Just a good question, well answered. But we'll go now to the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Will he take responsibility for the construction sector business confidence collapsing under his government's watch, from 1 in 3 businesses having a confident outlook to only 1 in 5 now?
What I take responsibility for is rebuilding the economy and the hell of a mess that we inherited. And you're starting to see that. We have stopped the wasteful spending. We've stopped loading costs up on businesses. We're getting spending under control. That's driving inflation down. Thankfully, and I hope the member is joining us in great celebration with the lower interest rates that came through last week. And from that will flow economic growth and ultimately more employment opportunities for people.
Supplementary, does he think the 6,000 people who've lost their jobs in the building and construction sector and the firms who are closing because they have a shortage of work because of his government's decisions think that this is what getting back on track looks like?
I think those 6,000 workers understand a government that had 6 years mucked around and actually drove the economy into a hole is the reason why they're doing it pretty tough. But they know on this side of the government, we want to actually make sure we build infrastructure and we get things done, and that's going to happen.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
And ask the Prime Minister, has got any plans to assign $54 million, for example, for cycleway over the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and when it's all over, nothing is done with it?
There was a lot of phantom projects from the previous government. We can go through them if you'd like. There was the cycle pathway over the Auckland Harbour Bridge. That was a lovely idea for about a week and a half or so. Sorry.
Point of order, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Mr. Speaker, it's the general approach to try and, as you've suggested, try and leave you to deal with that. Immediate response from the Prime Minister was to have a crack at the previous government, and it should have been ruled out right then. The question wasn't about that, but the Prime Minister made the answer about that, and it was out of order.
Well, that might be something that I'll need to look at the Hansard to reconsider.
Thank you.
Thank you.